Good morning and welcome to the Special Populations Committee. I will now call to order the August 31st, 2026 meeting of the Committee on Special Populations, our first meeting of this new academic school year. Before we would begin, I would like to give my colleagues a moment to introduce themselves, and I will start on my left with our board president.
Good morning, buenos dias. Grace Rivera Oven, representing District 1. Nice seeing you all.
Good morning. Happy school year. Laura Stewart, District 4.
And I am Rita Montoya, board member at large. Before we get started, I would like to just briefly remind everyone in the community, as well as all of our millions of viewers, that the charge of the Special Populations Committee is to work closely with the superintendent, review issues and instructional programs designed to meet the needs of special populations that require special education services, gifted and talented instruction, alternative programs, and multilingual supports. So in a nutshell, those are our 4 special populations. Can I please have a motion and a second to approve today's agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
So do we need to do a vote or is that enough? Just move it, correct?
That's enough.
Okay, thank you. And so we also have 2 informational items. The first informational item is the committee's annual work plan that will be presented to the full board for approval, and that is included in today's agenda. And I want to just briefly thank everyone in all of the departments, teaching and learning, alternative programs, emerging multilingual supports, special education services, for all of their hard work in getting this annual plan put together. This was not something I did by myself. It took all of the efforts and communications and meetings with my colleagues, with board staff, with all of the staff in MCPS, as well as our superintendent, as well as Ms. Porter and Dr. Cage, who are the heads of teaching and learning and specialized services. So I really appreciate everyone's efforts to getting this new approach off. Are there any questions regarding the annual work plan? And I believe this has to be moved on and voted out of committee as well, right, the work plan?
Actually, it's going to be the full board.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Okay, so if there's no other questions, then we will go ahead and move the annual work plan to the full board. And in addition, we also have the informational summary for the February 24th, 2026 committee meeting. That informational summary is posted in board docs, and any questions regarding that summary can be forwarded to Board of Education staff. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. Our first discussion is item 3.1, which is the overview of emerging multilingual learner support services. And so as staff go ahead and come to the table, please just introduce yourselves. Feel free to get started when you're ready.
Sounds good. Good morning, Chair and members of the board. We would like to do a quick round of introductions. So my name is Catherine Morales. I'm the Associate Superintendent for the Division of Multilingual Education.
Good morning, Daniel Yip, Supervisor, Division of Multilingual Education.
Good morning, buenos dias, Raquel Carson, Supervisor.
Good morning, Margarita Borges, Director of International Admissions and Enrollment.
Thank you for the opportunity to share an update on our emerging multilingual learners and the work of the Division of Multilingual Education. Today, we want to provide an overview of who our emerging multilingual learners are, what the data are telling us about this population, and how we are using that information to strengthen instruction, services, and outcomes for our EMLs. We will also highlight some of the early indicators of progress while recognizing that our beginning of year data are still evolving as students continue to enroll through the screening and identification process. Next slide, please. Before we look at some of our data and outcomes, we want to begin by highlighting who we serve and the legal foundation that guides this work. Emergent multilingual learners are a distinct student population, and our responsibility is to ensure they have meaningful access to instruction while they develop English proficiency. Our work is grounded in a strong federal, state, and local framework, including Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, the Equal Educational Opportunities Act, ESSA, Maryland Law and Comar, MSDE guidance, and MCPS policies and regulations. These are not simply compliance requirements. They establish our obligation to remove language barriers and provide equitable educational opportunities. That responsibility begins with timely and accurate identification. Once a student is identified, we must provide appropriate language development services and/or English language development programming, meaningful access to grade-level content, and communication with families in a language they can understand. We also have to monitor student progress and ensure that decisions about exit or reclassification are based on established state criteria. So as we move through this presentation and examine our data, we want to emphasize that the numbers are connected to a larger responsibility, ensuring that every EML has both access and opportunity to meet high academic expectations. Next slide, please. This data was pulled on August 24th, 2026 from our internal dashboard. This early year snapshot gives us several important insights into our EML population. We currently have approximately 24,620 active EMLs, that means enrolled and identified, representing 16.1% of our total enrollment of 152,519 students. This is a significant population within MCPS, and it is also incredibly diverse. Our students represent 175 home languages, with Spanish being the most prevalent, followed by French, Chinese, Amharic, Portuguese, Japanese, Arabic, and many others. We also see important subgroups within this population. For example, 40 students are currently identified as SLIFE, or students with limited or interrupted formal education, and 812 families have indicated that they are refusing ELD services. These data points are important because they help us understand not only the size of the population, but also the different experiences and instructional needs within it. We want to emphasize that these are preliminary numbers because the school year has just begun. Screening and identification are still underway, and we expect the number of students identified as EMLs to increase. Finally, while our 2026 access data remain embargoed, preliminary indications point to the beginning of an upward trend. These data help us understand both the scale of our work and where we need to continue focusing our efforts to ensure EMLs have meaningful access to grade-level instruction and the opportunity to succeed. Now I'm going to turn it over to Raquel.
Next slide, please. When we talk about the challenge facing our emergent multilingual learners, we want to be clear that the challenge is not their multilingualism. Our students' languages are their assets. The challenge in front of us is creating the instructional conditions that allow students to develop the English while simultaneously mastering grade-level content. As Catherine mentioned, identification and screening are still underway for our current students, but we see that the scale and diversity require a responsive, differentiated approach for our students, not a one-size-fits-all model. Our students enter with varying levels of English proficiency, educational experiences, and academic and linguistic needs. The instructional challenge in front of us is what we describe dually pronged, or a dual task. Students are learning the language of communication while also learning the academic language needed for math, science, literacy, social studies, and other grade-level content. We cannot ask our students to wait until they become proficient in English before giving them access to rigorous learning. Federal guidance is clear. Our English learners, our EMLs, are entitled to meaningful access to grade-level curriculum while receiving appropriate language services. This This brings us directly to an issue of equity. If language becomes a barrier to accessing rigorous instruction, advanced coursework, specialized programs, or other opportunities, then we have an access issue, not a student deficit. Our work is therefore focused on removing these barriers while maintaining high expectations for every single emergent multilingual learner. The question for us as a system is not whether we should challenge EMLs, it's how we design our instruction so that our students are appropriately challenged and supported at the same time. Our charge as a county is this. It is shared across the entire instructional system. It is our responsibility to our EMLs. I'd like to pass it to my colleague, Daniel Yip.
Thank you. Next slide, please. This action plan gives us a 4-year roadmap moving from foundational work to sustainable system-wide practices. This year, we're focused on building the foundation, strengthening registration, collaboration across different programs, Tier 1 instruction, data usage, and beginning functional language approach professional learning. FLA, or functional language approach learning, describes how all teachers have the tools to explicitly teach what all students should say or write for grade level content. In 26-27, our focus is building the foundation, which includes streamlining grades 1 through 12 registration processes and intake, strengthening language and content instruction simultaneously, establishing stronger data systems, launching FLA or Tier 1 professional learning for all educators, and also enhancing the EML data dashboard. Over the next 2 years, we will deepen and expand the work. Click the slide for the next animation cell, please. Thank you. First at the elementary level, then at the middle school level, while continuing to learn what we learned from our data walkthroughs and feedback from schools. In 27-28, we'll be strengthening those elementary systems, which include elementary staffing standards for ELD services, strengthening Tier 1 practice as well as FLA, continuing to expand FLA amongst elementary educators, and establishing sustained data-informed decision-making. Click slide, please. In 28-29, we're going to be expanding up to middle school, which includes refining middle school schedules and service delivery models for ELD services, implementing middle school staffing standards for ELD, expanding FLA to middle schools, and deepening cross-department collaboration in those middle school sites. One slide, click, please. In 29-30, we'll expand to high school with the goal of institutionalizing the practices that are working across the entire system. In 29-30, that also includes implementing high school staffing standards for ELD services, continuing to expand the implementation of FLA across all high schools, sustaining the data-informed decision-making, and also institutionalizing practices through leadership and continuous improvement. The important piece is that every year builds on the year before it. We are not introducing disconnected initiatives. We are intentionally creating the structures, instructional practices, data systems, and capacity needed for long-term success. Next slide, please. We'll know this plan is working when we see the impact at 3 levels: in our classrooms, across our schools, and ultimately in our student outcomes. In conjunction with the DSLI CFT cross-functional teams, we'll look for rigorous, language-rich instruction, strong systems that provide equitable access and support, and most importantly, immeasurable growth in language development, academic achievement, and readiness for life beyond MCPS. I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Margarita.
Thank you. We also want to take a moment to celebrate our progress. While our English language proficiency data remain embargoed, we are very encouraged by the progress we are seeing and look forward to sharing more when the data becomes available. We are also excited about our new centralized intake and screening process through IAE. We're good?
Next slide.
Yeah, next slide, please. We have digitized the required MSDE forms to strengthen compliance and centralize screening, reducing the administrative burden on schools and allowing our teachers to focus on instruction from day 1. This year, the process serves students in grades 1 through 12, with plans to expand the kindergarten next year. Together, these efforts strengthen compliance, instructional focus, and family partnership, and we look forward to continuing to build on this momentum. Next slide, please. We want to make it easier for both families and staff to know where to go for support. Families can begin with their school, while IAE provides support with intake, screening, and enrollment. Our DMA team is also here to support schools with instruction, programming, compliance, and professional learning. We are also in the beginning stages of planning regional family engagement events for the fall and spring, bringing resources and support closer to our multilingual families. More details will be shared as that work develops. Ultimately, our goal is to provide easier access and support and develop stronger partnerships with our families and schools. Now I'll turn it over to Catherine.
Next slide, please. So what do we need from the board? First, champion equity by keeping EMLs visible in conversations about achievement, access, and opportunity. Second, strengthen accountability by using EML data and outcomes to monitor progress, identify gaps, and ensure our strategies are producing results. Third, advocate beyond MCPS by supporting continued engagement with MSDE, federal partners, and policymakers to strengthen policies, guidance, and resources for multilingual learners. Fourth, advance the blueprint promise by ensuring multilingual learners and their families are fully reflected in our implementation of the blueprint. And finally, elevate family voice by ensuring multilingual families have meaningful opportunities to inform the decisions that affect their children. We know there's still a lot of work to do. Our hope is that together we can build stronger systems and create the conditions for our EMLs to thrive. Next slide, please. Thank you for being part of this work with us. Supporting our emerging multilingual learners is truly a shared responsibility, and it will take all of us working together. We are excited about the direction we are heading, and we look forward to continuing to listen, learn, and build together so that every EML is truly included, supported, and challenged. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your presentation. It's full of a lot of really important information for us and for the community. And I just want to highlight that there is also an appendix which contains some additional information for both my colleagues as well as folks in the community to understand some other concepts. So I will go ahead and turn it over for questions if either of my colleagues have any.
First of all, thank you so much for this presentation. I'm very excited about seeing the action plan. And as chair of the Strategic Planning Committee, I would love to see how this fits in with us tracking year by year through our strategic plan and those data points. The one thing I didn't see in here, and just because I know having 2 kids myself, being part of this world we're in today, I didn't see anything about the mental health supports or those kind of supports that aren't necessarily academic, and how does that fit into the plan?
So I'm not sure that we would address that here in this committee. Not that it's not important for all of our students and all of our communities. I'm just not sure that that's part of the charge either of this committee or even of this department. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
But if you'd like to answer, because I know you do have some supports that you offer, so the community knows that you're not supporting.
Correct. No, I'm happy to answer the question. We do have the EML therapeutic counseling team, which is still supporting our EMLs and our SLIFE students in the schools. We've had to modify our supports a little bit this year because of staffing cuts, but we are focusing on building the capacity of schools and counseling in the building to help support these students. And we're working closely with the Synergy team to have staff put in referrals through the MTSS process, and we will go out to do crisis respond and Tier 3 support for our EML students. So we're becoming a bit more intentional and making sure that the schools feel supported and build their capacity to support our EML students. So we are providing support, and we're still doing the intake process at enrollment at Rocking Horse Road. So all of our EML 1s and 2s and SLIFE students who are enrolling get one-on-one attention with an ETC at enrollment, and that has been a game changer for us over the last 3 years, and we're happy to report that we can continue that support.
Thank you so much. Again, we look at children holistically, so I just think it's really important after the budget we went through that people know that we do have supports for our children and that there will be referrals. Thank you.
Can I go, Ms. Montoya? Go ahead. So I'm looking at your action plan on page 5, if we can go there. I'm really happy we have an action plan. Kind of disappointed as a human who is a former EML and MCPS that we really did not have this in the prior years. I really believe if we did, we probably would have better results with our EML students, especially in the academic area. So I'll go along with the plan, but the plan's not going to be fully implemented till 2030, and we're in 2026. So we have a lag time there. So I kind of want to know, and I know this follows the staff standards. I get it. I totally get it. But still, it's 4 years away from being fully implemented. So my question is, what kind of supports are we doing to ensure that those kids who are not part of this plan are getting? And I want to get an idea of the student support that we have in the district. And how are we involving maybe for tutoring, mentoring? We have a plethora of nonprofits in this county, and we're not the best at partnering. And I have witnessed that firsthand with certain tutoring programs in the Up County. So what are we doing to ensure that? I know you have a plan for kindergarten, and you can tell us a little bit about later. But I'm going to tell you what my other issue is, that we don't have a plan for the pre-K population. And now we have a significant pre-K population that is all day. And I have actually referred a couple situations to our ombudsman because the pre-Ks that I refer, their first language was Spanish, and they were right at the cutoff of starting pre-K, and they had to take the intake testing only in English. But that doesn't mean cognitively and so on, they're not prepared for pre-K. So that is still a huge barrier. I understand those are state standards, and maybe this is where the advocacy needs to come in. But the advocacy needs to be a partner thing also with everybody. So we can put that, we can park it somewhere else, but so if you can just tell me, what are we doing now for the students that are not going to be part of the plan till 2030?
And if I can just interject, because I have a similar question, and I think you'll be able to address it all. Because I like the plan as well. It's also just really easy to follow. But one thing I noticed, and I'm looking at the functional language approach training, we're starting at K through 5, which makes sense when we think things chronologically, right? But if we go from K through 5 to then middle school to high school, it's that same group of kids as they travel along up towards graduation. But the kids who are right now in middle school and high school, they then are not receiving that FLA, the benefit of the FLA training.
Correct.
And so we kind of just skip over them in a way versus, and maybe this is not going to work either, but what if you started backwards, right, with high school? And so then also by the time the K through 5 kids get into middle and high school, they're trained. And now I could see why that would have some challenges as well. You obviously want to, teach kids what they need to know as soon as possible. So again, I don't necessarily have the perfect solution, but it's just something I noticed.
Yep, so thank you so much for the question, and yes, we know that this is multi-layer and multifaceted. So I will start with answering some of them, and then I'll give my colleagues the opportunity to answer. So to start, yes, you are correct. Maryland State the students, when they enroll in the county or in this state, they fill out what is called a home language survey. And based on that, depending on the responses, then the students could be identified as potential EMLs. Yes, this form is completed at the pre-K level. However, we cannot identify that student, like you mentioned, as an EML until they start kindergarten. So that's why we do not have potentially the supports that you would like to have in pre-K. Once the students are identified, yes, as you can see, this action plan, we have broken down into 4 different areas. The structures, which is what we mentioned earlier, we streamlined the intake process. And what I mean by intake process is that registration is very involved with the families, right? Because we are welcoming the families and the students into our county. This year, we extended even to our transfer students, so they are referred to IAE so that they can get the full-on experience and the welcoming to MCPS, and then they continue to the schools. Next year, what we would like is to extend that to the kindergarten, to our incoming kindergarteners. As far as the instruction goes, so yes, we do have a functional language approach. I just do want to mention, and team confirm if I'm incorrect, as I'm still learning and I'm fairly new, but some of these professional learning opportunities were provided at the secondary level, I believe, for social studies, middle school, or high
school, and then 2 years back.
Yes, correct.
Every school.
So it was provided to the secondary level. So what we are doing is building capacity now with K-5, since our staffing standards will start for K-5 the following year, so that we can, when we mean this professional learning, it's not just for ELD or for our dual language teachers. It's building the capacity of everyone at the building level, so that we can better support our students. In relation to our CFTs and our instructional specialists and plans, if you want to share how you're working with the CFTs. Go ahead.
So one of the questions were asked about how are students and teachers being supported in the right now before the staffing standards go into play. So one way that the cross-functional team members have supported schools this past year is by partnering with both content and English language development teachers at both the elementary, middle, and high school to support them in doing co-planning to ensure that they are planning instruction that is going to be providing our EMLs with successful opportunities to access the content. They also have been conducting walkthroughs and providing feedback to school leaders, such as resource teachers and content specialists. And in some cases, they have also gone in and done some modeling of lessons themselves throughout the year. So we know that it is not able to be a direct one-to-one correlation, as the cross-functional team members have a number of schools under their belts that they're supporting. But after this past school year, there have been educators and school leaders that have indicated that the instruction for EMLs has been benefited due to the support of our ELD cross-functional team members who support not just within the realm of English language development instruction.
One additional add-on is that we'll be offering the FLA, otherwise known as the Tier 1 training, to all teachers this year, and we have multiple cohorts for grades K through 12, actually. When we created this action plan, we were targeting the specific grade levels depending on the standards, but then we realized the same question of what about the students who are not recognized here? So we are offering it to all grade levels in K through 12. But something different this year is we're actually enlisting the support of the CFTs to lead more of the shoulder-to-shoulder coaching. So although we'll offer district-level PL, and this is in conjunction with the Department of Professional Learning, it will be for the first time ever actually having entire district operating around the Tier 1 instructional practices, which includes functional language approach for all teachers. And this will be just the expectation for all teachers to be able to walk away and say, I know how to work with EMLs, I know how to support them, I know how to provide specific language instruction in my content area to help the students. That's the goal. Now, our particular action plan is focusing on the district level supports, and we're going to target in those focus groups. But all of the ELD CFT members work very closely with our division. And we're ensuring that if they feel like they have a school who's ready to go now, we get them to go now.
Okay, and when it comes to, I know Mr. Rivera-Oven asked about like community partnerships or ways that we can kind of work together just outside of this specific department to support our students and our families. Is that a space where the department could use some support? Because I know, again, you're very focused on one piece of it, and
Yeah, so this year, what we will be doing is hosting our regional events. That is something new for MCPS. We have joined forces with other departments, including Oscar Alvarenga, the newcomer with under IAE and Margarita supervision, so that we can have our families join us. We're going to have the community partners. We're also going to be asking, it's still in the baby phases or stages of development. We're going to ask our educators to see and communicate with us the needs of our families in each building. And then based on that need, we're going to be crafting workshops for our families. We learned last year that some of them would like just a space in which they can come together to talk to each other. Right now, we're going to have the new curriculums, both for math and also the expansion of CKLA. So having those resources targeting, let's say, K2 strategies that they can use at home, 3-5 for our families, 6-8, and high school. So we are partnering with our teachers. The survey hasn't gone out yet, so I just want you to keep that in mind. But that is a goal that we have for one event in the fall, and then one in the spring. And then we'll collect data again to see how successful it is and where we can make some changes. We're going to have at these events all our partners and communities so that they can come and provide additional support, whether it's legal, community college, additional tutoring, or other experiences outside of, what we offer here in MCPS. Feel free to chime in if you have additional information.
Very quick question then. This is a process. This is going through. What is the guidelines? Because we have a community that is very mobile right now for various reasons, okay? So you might have a child who is at Wilkinsville today, and tomorrow they might be in Prince George's County, and then they're back, at Kennedy High School, but they were an EML student. The experience that I'm seeing with these families is that when they leave the district and come back, they are dropped as EML, and they have to, I guess the parent has to start the process again. The problem is that parents don't know this. So then the student gets put into regular classes. And it's only after months or when they're struggling, especially the students with an interrupted education. So I'm trying to see what kind of safety net do we have? Because I have already seen a couple situations where this has happened. What is the safety net? Or what are the schools know that if they have seen that a child has been EML, has moved out of the districts, come back, how can we connect 2 and 2?
So I'm happy to share that one of the upgrades we made late last year was for IAE to take over the enrollment of transfer students, which is in essence what you're referring to. So our students who leave Montgomery County and go to neighboring counties or even out of state and return are now considered transfer students. And they used to be enrolled by their home school, wherever they returned to, but now they're being routed through me, through my office in IAE. And for that very reason, we wanted to give those transfer students the support that they need to come back. We could connect them to community services. We could screen them for English proficiency if that's required, depending on how long they've been gone. We can connect them to an ETC. We can give them the orientation and the experience that our regular newcomers are receiving. And we are catching students who might otherwise have fallen through the cracks, depending on how the school was enrolling, what information was shared. And that's one of the wonderful improvements of enrolling transfer students through IAE.
Okay, thank you so much, Margarita. And there's also the truancy factor that might not be truancy, but they have not gone to school for a while, and they get unenrolled They have not really moved, but they're enrolled, and then when they enroll again, some of them are level 1, level 2, but they're in regular classes. So I just want to make sure that there's a safety net. So thank you for answering.
Just a quick question. I was looking at the challenge slide, and I wrote my own question is, how are we doing with bilingual staff and teachers and recruiting, and are we making progress there, or is that a challenge?
So right now, this is only in reference to the two-way immersion program, I believe that we are close to fully staffed, correct me if I'm wrong, in all 6 schools. Do we still have to?
Well, is the question like how is MCPS recruiting and hiring for educators who are bilingual in multiple languages so that they are reflective of our student population? Is that the
Correct.
question?
I'm also thinking about when we're offering rigorous opportunity, it helps if we have some bilingual teachers in those rigorous classwork. And so I just was wondering, how are we doing that, and are we making progress?
Yeah, so something that I did over this summer was that I connected with Georgetown University, the University of Maryland, and we have a little plan in place. We still have not been granted the federal funding, because they will have a pipeline if they win the grant to grow the staffing needed in either ELD service, ESOL certification and the teacher pipeline. In Maryland, we do not have a bilingual certification per se, but that will also be opening, the pipelines for teachers that are interested in working with students that speak other languages as well. So we're pending to hear back from them, and hopefully we'll have positive results within the next few weeks.
That's great news. Whatever we can do, again, to reflect our student body and make sure that kids have access to that rigorous content as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of you. I really appreciate your work. Have a wonderful day. And the next item on the agenda is 3.2, and this will be an overview of our special education services. And so once again, I would ask staff to go ahead and come to the table, and please introduce yourselves.
Good morning, members of the board, and thank you for the opportunity to provide an update from the Division of Specialized Support Services. My name is Kashara Perry. I am the Executive Director in the Division of Specialized Services, and I'm going to move to my colleagues.
Good morning. I am LaTanya Williams. I'm the Director of Inclusive and Specialized Learning Supports.
Good morning. I'm Shannon Farmer. I'm the Director of Special Education Services.
All right. So today, our team will provide an overview of where we are in special education, what our data is telling us, the areas that require our greatest attention, and the actions we are taking during the 26-27 school year. Our goal is to keep the conversation centered on access, inclusion, achievement, and outcomes for students. Next slide, please. Today, we want to provide the board with a clear picture of where we are in special education, the areas that require our greatest attention, and the actions we are taking. As we move through the presentation, we will focus on 3 areas: student outcomes, implementation, and system capacity. First, are students with disabilities making progress academically and leaving MCPS prepared for graduation and post-secondary success? Second, are services and supports being implemented consistently and with fidelity across our schools? And third, do we have the staffing, professional learning, structures, and resources necessary to sustain high-quality services. Those three areas will serve as the through line for today's presentation and for the measures we recommend the board to continue to monitor. Next slide, please. This slide illustrates the breadth of the work supported through our division. Special education is much more than an IEP document or a specialized classroom. It is a coordinated system that includes instruction, related services, inclusive practices, early childhood programming, transition services, assistive technology, behavioral supports, and specialized programs. For many of our students, several of these supports must work together at the same time. That requires strong coordination across our departments, and most importantly, strong implementation at the school level. Our responsibility at Central Services level is to ensure that schools receive clear guidance, appropriate resources, and the support necessary to provide students with a consistent, high-quality experience regardless of where they attend school. Next slide, please. The continuum reflects our responsibility to ensure that every student receives services in the least restrictive environment based on their individual strengths, needs, and their IEP goals. MCPS currently serves over 24,000 students with IEPs, and approximately 64% of those students spend at least 80% of the school day in general education settings. As we look across the continuum, our focus is not simply on moving students from one placement category to another. The larger goal is to make sure that IEP teams are making thoughtful, individualized decisions, and that removal from general education is considered only when a student's needs cannot be appropriately met with supports and services in the less restrictive environment. That also means we have a system responsibility to ensure schools have the staffing, instructional supports, related services, accommodations, and professional learning needed to serve students successfully. Strengthening inclusive practices is not just about placement. It is about making sure students have meaningful access to grade level instruction, appropriate supports, and opportunities to learn alongside their peers whenever appropriate. Next slide, please. We have just reviewed where our 24,000 students with IEPs are placed along the continuum. Here we show our program numbers telling us where our students are currently receiving services. As we look at the next section, we must ask, are our current placement and service models yielding the academic outcomes we expect? And what are the system barriers that currently prevent us from ensuring that every student, regardless of their LRE, has access to high-quality, consistent instruction? This leads us to our core problem statement. There's 14.6% of our population that requires not just placement, but a robust, consistent, and equitable system of support. I will turn over to Shannon. Next slide, please.
To ground our discussion, we have to look at the scale of our responsibility. 14.6% of our entire student population receives special education services. This is not a niche segment. It is a significant, vital portion of our student body that requires deliberate, specialized support every single day. Our mandate is twofold. First, to provide specially designed instruction, accommodations, and related services that are legally and ethically required. Second, and equally important, is ensuring that these services actually grant students access to the curriculum. We are moving beyond just providing services toward ensuring inclusive environments where we hold high expectations for every student. However, we recognize that our system needs to evolve in order to meet these goals consistently. For the 2026-2027 school year, we are shifting our focus to 4 specific pillars to stabilize and strengthen our service delivery. The first is infrastructure, building a stronger foundation for how we organize and deliver services. Instructional consistency, ensuring that a student in one building receives the same quality of support as a student in another. Professional learning, investing in the capacity of our staff to meet diverse needs. Compliance, moving towards strict system-wide fidelity to ensure we meet our mandates every time. This strategy isn't just an internal policy. It is the necessary response to data challenges we are about to discuss. Next slide, please. Having established the scale and the mandate of our work on the previous slide, we now have to look critically at what our current data tells us about outcomes and system-wide trends. The first and the most pressing concern is our academic performance. With fewer than 20% of our students with disabilities currently reaching proficiency in reading and math, we have a clear and urgent need for instructional intervention. We are seeing persistent gaps, particularly for our multilingual learners, which tells us that our current support models may not be fully aligned with the diverse needs of our students. Simultaneously, we are seeing significant shifts in our system demand. Our SES enrollment has grown by 20% since fiscal year 2017, and we are serving over 5,100 students with autism. This isn't just a numbers game. It impacts how we deploy our staff, how we design inclusive settings, and where we must focus our professional development resources to ensure that our teachers are equipped to meet this growth. Finally, we are managing a significant investment in non-public placements, with over 629 students currently placed outside of our system at a cost exceeding $66 million annually. This highlights the gap between what we are currently capable of providing in-house and what our students need to succeed. The key takeaway is that while the demand for specialized services is increasing, our academic results are not matching that growth. This tension between rising service demand and flat academic outcomes is exactly why we must prioritize the systemic challenges and equity gaps we will discuss in the next few sections. Next slide, please.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to interject for a moment just to put us back to slide 7 real quick, because I think things can get a little confusing, right? We're talking about such a large group of students in the sense that the needs are all very different in this group. They may have one label, right, as children receiving special education services, but as you know, your slide where you have the LREs like demonstrates, not all of the students are in need of the same service. It doesn't look the same for every student. There's just such a huge variety, right? And so when you're looking then on slide 7 at the key takeaway, which academics, that's what we're here to do at the end of the day, right? And we're talking about different outcomes and results that we're seeing. When we're looking at those numbers for students receiving special education services, are we looking at all 24,000 students in that, or are some students perhaps on a different path where maybe they're not taking MAP R this week, right? And so are we still talking about the same disproportionate outcomes even when we perhaps maybe disaggregate within the group of students receiving special education services? Is my question clear? I know that was a little jumbled. I apologize.
Yes, so just for clarification, are you talking about as far as the set of services students are receiving, and are you also asking as far as students who are on an alternate framework as well?
Right, so if we're looking at, for example, math test results from MAP for fall, when I look at that percentage for students receiving special education services, is that percentage corresponding to the students who are 60 to 80% of the time in general education, or is that also including the students who might be in a special program who might are they taking MAP-R also? Maybe some of them are, some of them aren't, right? I just want to make sure that when we're looking at that number and it's representative of a group of students,
Who are we looking at?
we want to know exactly who, because again, the variety of need and support is so across the board, right?
Yep, and that's a very good point, and you are correct. So when we're looking at those assessments, we're looking at all students who are diploma bound.
Okay, so diploma-bound students are the students that we're capturing when we look at students receiving special support services test results.
Yep, when we're looking, yep.
So very quickly, can I just follow up? So
Yes.
So then, what percentage of the special education population is not diploma bound?
So if you look at the continuum of services, back on page 4, we do have LREC. Those are our students that are outside of the general education environment, and a large portion of those students will be the one on alternate outcomes. We do have a few that are not, but most of those students in that category will be outside of general education and on the alternate track.
And so A and B would be on the diploma-bound track.
That's
And then
correct.
C it just depends on the particular student.
That's
Okay,
correct.
Thank you so much.
That's a lot clearer. Thank you.
Thank you.
And go ahead, and I apologize again for interrupting.
No, you're fine. Thanks.
All right, I believe that takes us to slide 8. Okay. Behind the enrollment numbers are 14.6% of our students, each with diverse and unique learning needs. Our responsibility is to move beyond generic service delivery to truly personalized support. This is the most critical part of our side. Our data shows we are not serving all students equitably. We see clear disproportionality, specifically Black and African American students are identified for alternative assessments at rates that suggest bias in our process, not just students we serve or student needs. We also have a distinct responsibility for our multilingual learners who require better coordination between language acquisition and disability-related supports. Next slide, please. The data shows us where we are, but this slide addresses why we haven't reached where we need to be. We have identified 3 specific systemic friction points that are limiting our impact. The most pressing number on this slide is 61%. While this is a stark figure regarding noncompliance, we view it as a diagnostic tool. It highlights that our current procedures and oversight mechanisms are not sufficiently robust. We are moving from a state of monitoring to active, targeted resolution to close those gaps. Perhaps the most critical challenge is the variation in experience. A student's access to high-quality instruction, inclusive settings, and consistent crisis support should not depend on which school they attend. Our goal is to shift from a system of localized, variable practices to a unified, high-standard model that applies to every student everywhere. Finally, we are looking at capacity. We know that expanding inclusive practices like LREB requires more than just policy. It requires skilled staff and strong middle-level models. We must strengthen our internal capacity to ensure our educators feel supported and effective in these inclusive environments. The bottom line here is that we have the vision, but we lack the consistent execution. Our plan moving forward, which we will detail next, is designed specifically to turn these challenges into our operational priorities for the coming year. Next slide, please. Moving into our strategic priorities, we are launching a unified special education playbook, implementing comprehensive professional development and strengthening compliance systems to ensure procedural consistency. We are also looking at our system improvements through initiating an equity-based program boundary study and advancing ALO policy and regulatory changes to align with MSDE standards. For instruction and inclusion, we are focused on strengthening evidence-based instruction across all grade levels and improving inclusive practices and LRE alignment. For support and collaboration, we are expanding early intervention and behavioral crisis supports while increasing robust cross-department collaboration to better serve our students. Next slide, please. I will now turn it over to Dr. Williams.
Awesome. Thank you. So now that we went over the outline of the strategic priorities, we want to look at this timeline, which illustrates a roadmap for executing each initiative for this school year. I aligned this to the acronym LIME. So we have launch, implement, monitor, and evaluate. So from about August to September, we will launch. So here we will establish our foundation by finalizing the guidance. We want to look at setting those baselines with the data and then launching, as Shannon said, the special education playbook. And then we go into implement between October and December. So here we want to roll out our priority professional learning opportunities and then reinforcing the compliance routines that we discussed. And then we want to deploy the targeted supports to schools. So as we're establishing this data, we want to then make sure that schools are supported in a differentiated manner. And then from January to March, this is when we get into the monitoring piece. Here we want to conduct data-driven reviews of the LREs discussed and look at patterns as well as if there's any staffing gaps that we can adjust maybe mid-year so that we can be more preventative. And then going into our spring, we'll evaluate. So from about April to June, we want to access those final outcomes. And this would actually guide our discussion around FY28 budget requirements. And then also letting us know what we need to identify as high impact practices that we want to scale. Next slide, please. All right, so what are the budget implications? So transitioning from that implementation timeline, now let's look at how we're going to establish the framework for monitoring our progress and just making sure we're maintaining that accountability throughout the year. So the first point I want to discuss is the data-informed decisions. So we'll conduct regular scheduled reviews of each LRE placement and look at those patterns. And then we want to look at the staffing metrics as well as the student academic performance, just continuing to focus on positive student outcomes. And then we'll look at some adjustments. So the findings from these reviews will serve as a continuous feedback loop. We want to make sure that we're looking at data that is continuous and is telling a story, and then allowing us to pivot supports in real time as we need to resolve those or evolve practices. And then my next point is the stakeholder transparency. We've remained committed to the consistent, clear reporting to the board and the community on our progress against our strategic priorities outlined. And then our last point here is the accountability. This framework ensures that our initiatives remain effective, impactful, and aligned with our commitment to every student. Next slide, please. So building on that monitoring framework we just established, we want to now define the specific metrics that will determine the impact of our initiatives. So first, we have student outcomes. Here we are prioritizing improved academic achievement in both reading and math, with the focus on increasing access to grade-level instruction, shall say grade-level high-quality instruction, and post-secondary readiness. And then next, we want to look at the service delivery. Our goal is to ensure consistent, high-fidelity service delivery across all schools within MCPS and emphasizing inclusive LRE practices and reducing the reliance on reactive measures and then costly interventions. And then the last point here is the system capacity. So here we want to build the educators' capacity, just strengthen our compliance systems across the district and utilize the data-driven continuous improvements that we discussed to refine our instructional practices more immediately. So ultimately, our success is defined not just by the provision of services, but by whether students with disabilities are making measurable and meaningful academic progress across the district. Next slide, please. So having defined our broad success measures, this slide right here, slide 14, breaks down the specific actionable targets we will use to monitor our progress across every student outcome, our service delivery models, as well as the system's capacity. So first, with the student outcomes, here we want to accelerate our reading and math proficiency. We want to make sure we're increasing the grade level access And we also want to make sure that we're monitoring the post-secondary readiness for students. And then with our service delivery model, just standardizing our LRE A and B placement models. So we're looking at more inclusive opportunities and reducing the service variability across the district. So no matter what set of services you're in a district, we see consistency with the implementation and just ensuring that IEP fidelity. And then the last column talks about system capacity. So here we want to expand the professional learning. We want to improve compliance accuracy and optimizing those placement investments. So are students progressing, and are we seeing positive learning outcomes for each student? Next slide, please. All right, so what does the board need to do or monitor here? So these are areas we recommend the committee just continue to monitor throughout the year. First and foremost are, of course, the student outcomes. So reading and mathematics achievement, the academic growth and progress, student graduation rates, as well as the post-secondary readiness, just making sure that we're seeing positive progression in those areas. We also need to monitor the equity and the inclusion. So here, this includes the LREs, which we outlined in prior slides, just making sure every single student has access to the high-quality, grade-level instruction as well as material, and just addressing the disproportionality. So this will help us determine whether students are receiving equitable opportunities and appropriate supports across every single school in Montgomery County. So the first part we have here is our implementation of workforce capacity. So here we want to make sure that they're equally important. We want to know whether IEP services and supports are being implemented consistently, whether compliance concerns are being corrected, and whether schools have the staffing, expertise, as well as the professional learning opportunities needed to meet every student's needs. And then finally, we must monitor fiscal sustainability. So particularly the growth and cost of non-public placements and whether investments in early intervention and inclusive supports are making a difference. Ultimately, these measures move us beyond asking, did we complete the work, to asking the more important question, which is, are the changes we are making resulting in better outcomes and students and experiences for students with disabilities? Next slide, please. Thank you for this opportunity.
Now, if you have any questions?
Yes, I do. First, let me just say, thank you so much for the presentation. I know this is work in progress. So this population is one of the reasons why I ran for office.
Nice.
Literally. Because I felt that for years, the people that go into these professions, really, this is a vocation, it's a calling, and I just felt that it wasn't being done in a systematic way across. It was like, if you went to this school, that school is great, you're lucky. But if you go to that school, well, you know, that kid might fall through the cracks. And I think for me, that's a pain point in all of this, is that I want to make sure that no matter what school the kids or what district they're in, they're going to get the same treatment, vetting, evaluation, and support. And I think by looking at some of the data, we're going to be surprised there's such a disproportionate amount of Black and brown kids who are falling through the cracks that are not getting those supports. So I like, you know, how we're doing the implementation, and I know things cannot change over time, but I just want to make sure that the folks who are the frontline folks, especially our paraeducators who are special ed, and I don't want to take too long, but I just going to read a little excerpt of the kinds of emails and messages that I get, because I go to a lot, you know, I try to be as engaged as I can to just see how we can help them. One wrote, Ms. Gray, so I've been thinking, I was wondering if you can help us with this. In the training that we have for the paraeducators and special ed, there's really nothing for special need paras. I had to take the 18 hours latter course, and it's all about general ed students. Maybe a splash of special education after the 18-hour course, but you still need to take another 80 hours of PDO training, and I have more hours, but it's all general ed. I do not work with general ed. I am needed as a quick sub, but that's it. I feel like special education is not out there as it should be. It is such a different types of disabilities and how to work with each individual student because they are all so different. Quick example, I work with a student that has seizures often. This can be very, very scary. And the training and the compliance training did not teach me anything. I had to look it up. I had to look her disability. I had to learn myself how to treat her seizures. So what I learn on my own, I teach other parents in my classroom. You might say, why? Because when I'm not there, I want to make sure, and not wondering if my student will be okay. So this is a sentiment of many special paraeducators across this district. And the staff. And when I look at some of the students that are in general ed, that's 63%, I think you said, I want to make sure that everybody in that building can relate and treat our children with disabilities. Now, some, like in this situation, you know, are probably not in general ed. But even when we look at a Longview, at a Stephen Knowles, I look at the lack of diversity from the staff, and I look at the student populations that are growing that don't look like the staff at all, or the lack of language accessibility for these parents to help them, and it breaks my heart. It really does. So I'm wondering, what are we doing to work on those gaps? And what are we doing to do the vetting of some kids who are coming into our system? Again, my experience last year with a couple of kids, and one of them really broke my heart, because when I visited the school, this little girl, nonverbal, she was there in September when I went to back to school night. She was nonverbal, and they said, oh, no, we have the team, they're going to do the vetting. So I went to visit the school in December. She was still there, nonverbal. Literally, the staff were taking turns to look after her in the security room. And I said, when is she? Oh, she's been vetted, but they told us to try something else. I'm like, but she's nonverbal. Went back in January, she was still there. Went back in March, she was still there. So I think finally, at the end of April, she was placed. But that was literally a whole school year that this child was by herself, in a sense. And the toll that it took on the staff on that school broke my heart too. Because pretty much it was just babysitting her. And it was not, so I'm trying and I'm hoping that we have a systematic way, again, that is not by luck, but it's in a system-wide way that we, that we're able to deal with it. So if you can help me out with that, with the consistency that we need to have across the district, especially in our Black and brown families, help me out.
And I just want to add on to similar to what you're talking about in terms of training. And this is prior to any of you actually being at this table. I recall, I think it was my very first Special Populations Committee meeting. I asked the then staff members, before Dr. Cage as well, do staff in the general education classrooms receive basically diagnosis-specific training, right? If we have a lot more children now who are diagnosed with ADHD in general education classrooms, are we training about that so that staff, and the answer then was no, because, it was something like, well, we don't want them to see them as a diagnosis. I get that. I don't want kids to be seen as a diagnosis either, but we also have to understand to be able to support them. So just to kind of add that on to Ms. Rivera-Oven's question, if you can address that.
Yeah, so I think first, and it was and thank you for sharing that with us. So one of the things that we are actually launching this year is our professional development plan, which we are excited about. We have gone through each of our departments within our division and look at what professional development that we need to offer teachers as a whole, which will include paraprofessionals as well. And what the
Thank
division
you.
has done.
Thank you. I will
Yes.
pass along the message. It's going to be well received by many of these paraeducators, because you all know the paraeducators in special education are incredible human beings.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Yes, so we have worked to get all of that going, and we'll have that finalized by September 30th, where we're moving into our schools to provide the professional development that will be open to all of our staff members to come out, including our general education staff as well.
It will be open or required for them to be educated and trained?
That's a great, so it's difficult when it comes to our contracts and what we can require. So we're looking at, in terms of the rollout, where we can go with our special education training for our staff, open to our teachers within the day, and of course the specific days that we have for professional development throughout the year, we'll have them come out, which will be mandatory. Anything that we're doing beyond, we cannot make it mandatory, but we'll continue to offer the professional development for them. But most of it will be mandatory for our teachers to attend.
Okay, so there's some that we cannot require because of other issues that the board can address?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to speak a little bit more to the training. I know that you had mentioned about a student with epilepsy. We do partner closely with school health services through DHHS, and our school nurses write individualized healthcare plans and emergency care plans for our students with medical needs. And those school nurses are then tasked to train our staff that work with those students on how to administer any emergency medication, and also how to support the student in the classroom as well as in an emergency situation.
And I appreciate that, but I also know that, especially in elementary school, our nurses have multiple schools that they go to. And you might have a child who comes in and have through the year. And so I think the training for our para-special educators, especially, it should just be a child with seizures or with epilepsy. This is what you do, right? Like, it should just be honestly across the board for all, because it could be really scary if you don't have the training. And it could be the difference between saving a life. So, and I don't know, I thought I heard somebody said that we were having a shortage of nurses. I don't know if, I think that, am I not dreaming that?
So we can't
That's not
speak
my
to DHHS, but I can say that we also work with different nursing agencies when a student requires a private duty nurse to support.
Yes.
And we know, just like in the field of education, nursing and health services is also short across the board, just like in education.
Yes.
But it is something that we are working to remedy as often as possible.
And that's what I'm huge on, ensuring that we have training across the board, especially for our new special ed educators. Like the one I read, she's seasoned and she's happy to help others and train others. But if we could have that across the board, I think it would be beneficial to all.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. That doesn't come up in a lot of spaces, so I'm trying to tamp down on my excitement. Hi, I'm Shauna K. Jornby. I'm the Director of Student Wellbeing. Part of my role includes working with school health services. So that's the middle part. And one of the things I wanted to share with you is, and I'm proud of this for Maryland and for all of us, because DHHS does work really hard on this part. Our entire system, every staff member, bus driver, cafeteria worker, everybody, must take something called Level 1 Health Awareness Training, in addition to, and I have to say this, our required OSHA training, like bloodborne pathogen. It's like required by law. They must also, if they work in schools, take Level 1. Level 1 is training for all staff. That includes, and yes, they're the like modules that you can watch. They include 4 key areas required. The first one is anaphylaxis. Everybody's got to know how to respond to that. Bronchio inhaler, so any respiratory distress, we have to respond to that. The third one is diabetes. There has to be some knowledge about what that looks like for every staff member. And the last one is seizure response. So seizure response training is required for every staff member. They're required to take it within 60 days of starting school. So a lot of people still do have time. As of today, 17,000 of our staff members have completed their level 1 health awareness. To your point though, Ms. Rivera-Ovens, if you do work directly with a student that has seizure, you require more than what is the general knowledge at level 1. And so every school must have a minimum of 3 staff members who are trained at level 2 training. And then every specific child with documented, because we don't always know sometimes until it happens, with documented seizures or other seizure disorders must take a training with a school health nurse or tech called level 3 training. So they have to have what's called like hands-on application in case that happens. All of this must be done within 60 days of returning to school. So the date for all of those things to be complete is mid-October. And so I'm hopeful that if the person that wrote you, obviously out of concern, has not received that yet, that they will receive that by the mid-October date that's required by law.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the responsibility to do that, is it the principals?
So couple things. The system has the first responsibility in offering the training. So it is on PDO. It's course 934588 and 89. Everybody must take it, including everybody here. So that's the first level responsibility, and we track it centrally. The second responsibility is at the principal level. You are correct. Principals are responsible for their staff. So all principals must attest that this information has been shared with staff, including giving them a guide that's provided for them about what to take. And then the third responsibility is on the nurse. Nurses manage something called like individual health plans for each student, and they vary. They're all different student by student, but if student has a health plan, the nurse has to make sure that everybody that interfaces with that student has reviewed the health plan and that those protocols are in place. But that's
Thank you.
Smaller.
Okay. Really just a quick question. Are principals required to take this?
Everybody's required to take it. Every single person in the system is required to take it. And principals are required to attest that they have repeatedly shared the information up until the deadline.
Okay.
So if someone doesn't take it, it's on us to address a central office, but principals must share the information, and there's a tracking mechanism that I can see each day how many people are active in the
Okay, thank you.
I want to talk about our program numbers and trends. So our largest program is actually LFI and then the Learning Center. And I've heard, it seems like the Learning Center numbers have been going up. And do you have some insight into that? And how are we finding room and in our schools for that?
Yep, great question. So this is where our professional learning comes into play, as well as the understanding of the continuum. So we do want to make sure the students who are coming to UK are also to access level curriculum, working with not only our teachers, but also educators, as well as partnering with our curriculum department, just to make sure across the district there are equitable practices. So for learning centers, what we're getting is the students found. So the question is, can they to make sure when we're looking at all the honors, making follow decision. So say you have a student coming into kindergarten or first grade, do we have data to support that they need that specialized instruction outside of the general education classroom? So again, this will take work with building a capacity, just making sure school teams are using data and students access services. As we go, so that's that learning center. us and be are learning in their processing that we're not them there. So also collecting data as far as moving from LRE CB back to maybe LRE A, and also just like there's in a school building. So as clear the common language, we can build a capacity around what are inclusive opportunities. So
I mean, but how are we going to get there? It's great if the kids in class create that chaotic classroom that we sometimes hear about when kids' needs are not being met. And then how are we using our staff appropriately to build in that support we need? I know we saw, like a multi-year plan in the last presentation. Are you all working on some kind of plan to move towards this goal? Because they're becoming over, and at least my observation.
Yes, and I think to your point, we are working on building capacity of school teams to work effectively with students. And I think we've seen a gap over this year as we've collected our data, and as a team, we've done our data review sessions where we look for and conducting long observations. We see that there is a gap in terms of what teams are able to do and classroom to support them. And when the gap, we see that our students are in this way. Part of the professional development plan and the playbook is to address those gaps that we have. To do that, and we'll truly see that once we're building that, higher level instructional programming in order to work that can look like the we don't see capacity, like the gaps in the
and I've had many conversations with Dr. Cage about how you all are working to address this to make sure there's a lot of you want to education the place for them. Thank you. I am gifted and talented. You can go and get started. Okay.
supervisor of accelerated instruction to present on gifted and talented programs and MCPS. Next slide. Our work is by law, where we serve outstanding capabilities that far individuals evaluate our student body. They aren't just looking at traditional grades. They are identifying remarkable potential, creative, artistic, and leadership domains. These students demonstrate an extraordinary capacity to excel, but that potential can only be realized when we provide targeted support. Program definition of academic excellence and multidimensional talent, we honor our obligation to ensure these high learners are identified early, challenged appropriately, and supported fully. Next slide. In general, parents and caregivers should contact the school first, inquire about gifted and talented identification for grade or advancement. We believe very much in the home-school partnership and do our best to make sure that the accelerated is playing of a support role. Next. Gifted and talented population, 19%, approximately 30,000 students. I've highlighted the subgroups of students that are underrepresented within the 19.4%. We've included the number of students to give reference to the percentage that is. Pay close attention to the groups highlighted in purple that are further explained on a future slide. I'll give you a minute to review the data.
Thank you. And if Ms. Jackson could also just introduce herself. I called her up to the table because we really appreciate Ms. Jackson on this committee.
Hi, Sarah Jackson, twice exceptional instructional specialist by AI. Good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling her up. Next slide. This slide details additional subgroups along with the number of students within each subgroup. Again, pay close attention to the groups highlighted in purple. I'll give you a minute to review the data. Next slide. In order to determine how much the highlighted subgroups are underrepresented, we followed the guidance of MSDE to use Donna Ford's Equity Index formula. Ideally, the percentage of students that make up an entire student population should be the same percentage that makes up the gifted population. However, Donna Ford's calculation considers a minimum threshold of 80%, and anything below that would be considered severe underrepresentation. So now let's look at our numbers. Our twice exceptional students, specifically highlighting our students that receive special education services, make up 14.6% of our student population and 3.3% of our gifted population. Using Donna Ford's minimum threshold of 80%, we minimally want our number to be 11.68%. Our emergent multilingual learners make up 21.3% of our total population and 1.4% of our gifted population. According to Donna Ford's equity formula, they should minimally make up 17.04%. Black students make up 21.9% of the total student population and 14.1% of the gifted population. We minimally want our number to be 17.52%. And lastly, Hispanic Latino students make up 35.2% of our total student population and 13.9% of our gifted population. And we want at least 28.16% of Hispanic Latino students represented in our gifted population. While all of these student groups are considered underrepresented according to Donna Ford's equity formula, our emergent multilingual learners have the lowest percent of identified gifted and talented students. Next slide.
And can I interrupt you for one moment?
Yes.
Because obviously, right, we can see that number, that's not meeting the threshold.
Yeah.
But I want to just take us back for a moment to slide 5. Because I requested some information that we don't typically in regard to students. I asked for only current students for given classes, but also the either recently exited or were ever emergent multilingual learners. Because I wanted to see if I saw what I see, what actually came out, right? That actually it gets quite high. We start approaching our threshold under the equity formula when we include all of those, which, and this is...
And once they exit, yeah.
Right, once they exit, right? And we know from other data, other presentations we've had at full board and whatnot, that once our students exit, they're doing really well.
Yes.
So I want to highlight that. That's not to minimize the fact that our current students, right, we would like that to be higher, and that you shouldn't have to have mastered English to be able to access that level of access. That is not a way to minimize that. I do want to highlight that once our students do have that proficiency or that mastery, that they seem to be able to engage in those accelerated or higher grade level coursework.
Yes.
And I apologize. We were on slide.
Thank you. Yes. In order to increase the number of gifted emergent multilingual learners, collaboration with the Division of Multilingual Education is essential. Data measures such as WIDA access will need to be considered as access. For example, students that acquire the English language at a rapid rate show signs of giftedness. The WIDA access data can help us with this determination. After establishing appropriate criteria and identifying the students, a service model will have to be created. When will these students receive enrichment opportunities, and what enrichment resources will be used? Professional learning will need to and teachers implementation. Enrichment materials will be used, and enrichment guidance will need to be developed. Next slide. Similar to our emergent multilingual learners, collaboration with is paramount for our student services. Through this partnership, we will establish a process for students whose IEP cognitive assessments meet gifted thresholds are accurately coded as gifted and talented. Once identified, these twice exceptional students have a comprehensive service model designed to balance necessary academic interventions with targeted enrichment, supported by a specialized social emotional curriculum tailored to their unique needs. Professional learning will have to take place so that the service model can be implemented with fidelity. While we do have some materials that are readily accessible to use right away, Additional enrichment materials will need to be purchased, and enrichment guidance will need to be developed. Next slide. In support of increasing the number of Black and Hispanic Latino students, I had the opportunity to meet with 6 school districts to learn how they implement primary talent development, also known as PTD. We have implemented our PTD program with the help of 0.5 PTD coaches for 10 years in Title I schools only. However, this year we are in transition as our 0.5 PTD coaches were not funded for fiscal year 27. Our Black and Hispanic Latino students can benefit from a district-wide PTD program, not just in Title I schools. Therefore, during this transition year, we are planning to revamp our current program. I will use the information that I learned from the other school districts to inform our next steps. Collaboration with other MCPS content areas will be instrumental so that the PTD work can be built into the current core curriculum.
Can you just tell us what it means without the acronyms?
PTD, is that professional training?
Primary talent development.
Primary,
I'm sorry.
okay. No, that's okay.
I said it earlier.
You did, but I think we didn't catch the acronym. I apologize. Primary talent.
I'm sorry. Yep. I will use information that I learned from the other school districts to inform our next steps. Collaboration with other content areas will be instrumental so that the primary talent development work can be built into the current core curriculum. We will need funding for the creation of enrichment materials, possible purchase of enrichment resources, and professional learning. Next slide. As we begin to widen our gifted pool and provide appropriate services to our gifted and talented students, we should see a direct correlation to academic performance. Specifically, there should be an upward trend in academic achievement of our underrepresented student groups. We will monitor the growth of these students on district assessments, MAP growth reading, M-Class math, and M-STAR. Next slide. How can the board support? I'm glad you asked the question. First, expanding our talent development program beyond Title I schools and without primary talent development coaches is no easy feat. It will take meaningful collaboration, meticulous planning, and intentional support during rollout. Your help in advocating for this district-wide equity shift when the time comes would be helpful. Second, as new policies are being developed, engage with MSDE around making sure our gifted and talented students are part of the conversation, and more importantly, written into the policies. Lastly, elevate the academic achievement of our students to district-wide conversation. Subgroups, gifted and talented students' data and data charts are in MCPS. For today, I ask that you continue to ask how our gifted learners are doing academically so that together we can uplift the importance of the academic achievement of the student population. Next slide.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Open it to discussion by my colleagues. Ms. Stewart?
I think you alluded to it on the how can the board support, but as we're working through our new regional models, how do you see we can be intentional about having access to gifted and talented learning throughout our regions in an equitable way? So no matter where you are in the county, you can get that support. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Initial thoughts would be around the professional learning piece, making sure that all educators that are in front of our gifted and talented students, no matter what region they are in, receive the appropriate training and support so that they know how to work with our high ability learners. particularly around our social emotional needs. I know Sarah works a lot with schools around those needs. And so they reach out to us, but we want to be a better support in that area because we know that's a rising need.
And how about in the K through 2 space? Because I did see you did lift that up. It seems in the past that we haven't been very intentional about that space, giving more enrichment opportunities.
Yeah, I think the primary talent development program is going to be instrumental in making sure that enrichment is provided to every student in kindergarten through 2nd grade throughout the entire school district. So that will be the purpose of that program.
And also making sure that we do not let internal biases get in the way of that, because I do think that is something we see in classrooms, unfortunately, still today.
Yes. So that's why it's important for the enrichment that we hope to infuse within the core curriculum. It will become part of the curriculum. So the talent development will just be a normal part of the curriculum.
And just one more question about our 2E students. How are we supporting them? Just looking at these numbers, and that program has kind of been shifting through time. How can we make sure we're actually providing the supports to our 2E students?
I think it's, I think there's a multi-pronged approach in there. Like Christy said, ensuring that we get professional learning out to our general education teachers, pairing with the special services so that we can get more professional learning and more direct professional learning, especially at the elementary level, to our special education teachers. It is a growing population. And the thing that peaks first, that most people notice first, is behavior and social emotional needs. And to piggyback on what Christy was saying, I think helping more general educators and special educators, and say all educators in general, understand that the social emotional needs of gifted students are, again, a common factor between twice exceptional and gifted. Often the twice exceptional kids the self-regulation piece is more evident of a challenge, but that doesn't mean that the gifted kids aren't feeling it too. And I feel like especially at those younger ages, when the enrichment isn't there and the social emotional understanding isn't there, I worry that we're identifying prematurely, or that we just don't understand what we're seeing in those K2 students, which at that level, because 5-year-olds don't have the best self-regulation skills in general, and then you compound it with giftedness, it can often look like it's a special need that might not actually be there. So ensuring that our professional learning is beyond academic and really focuses on those social emotional needs. And I hear that from the consults that I do and from the teachers who take our choice classes over the summer. More and more of them are focusing on those social emotional needs beyond even executive functioning, which I think is one that we know is pretty key for most twice exceptional kids. But more and more there's understanding that we need to understand that the whole child, the whole need, that happy and self-regulation are two different things, and that self-regulation is the important part, because that is the stem from what the learning, the executive functioning, so much of that comes from that. And so the more we can get that information into the hands of the people who are boots on the ground first with our students, and the more we can provide that within that classroom setting, the better foundation we have for when we do our services, and not have to that access to teachers. And I heard the special education team similar, a lot we can offer, but I know that the teachers see them because they need a credit. I want you to come to my class for every reason gets you there. When you about the value of learning that whole child piece and being able to that back to the classroom. Often they come, if they don't come just for the credit, they come for one student and they support a student. Always just their twice exceptional learners. And so the more information more training we can get out, the better.
Thank you so much for that. I just want to point out there's a theme today is be a lot about education, educating ourselves, not just educating our parents. Yes, and
Our professional
again,
learning standards say that the best gifted and talented teachers are not gifted and talented themselves, but they are learners, and so that's a key feature for the work we do.
sounds good. I will look forward to again through the year looking deeper into this, but also I'm a person that likes to see that intentional plan going forward. So if we could get, I would love to see that, right? Like this is what we're implementing this year, and this is what we would like, where we want to see it going. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So I would like to know what collaboration is going on between you guys and Ms. Morales' shop.
Yep.
And have a very concrete idea of what you guys are doing. Because obviously, when we look at data, right? 21.3 of our student population and only 1.4 are gifted population. So that could mean a couple of things, right? We can do hearsay. We can mean our evaluations are not working, or there's a lack of professional training going on. What kind of professional training can we give to the EML teachers, to Catherine's shop? So I just want to know what is the plan. And I know you guys are a small team also. So are they. But mighty teams can work very well together and do magic. And I know, Sarah, are you still solo? Are you still by yourself?
I like to think in my heart there's lots of us to support me.
Okay, well, good thing you're a good pilot. But I appreciate your work. I really do. And I really think, we, as my colleagues have said, the theme is about educating ourselves. I really like to think that it's not optional. I really would like us to educate ourselves on all these levels because we are no longer a linear educational system. We have multiple populations. We need to embrace that. But in order to be able to do special ed, it's like I have these aha moments all the time. And the twice exceptional, for example, that was an aha moment. So we think we know it all, and we really don't. But in order to serve our students better, honestly, our teachers and support staff, we need to ensure that. So if you can tell me what things are you guys working with Ms. Morales? I don't know if Ms. Morales wants to come up to the table and tell us, how you guys are working on that. And then you said, I don't know.
This year, we don't have any. So we will be coming up with a plan on how to have coaches, and they're doing it.
I was thinking of my counterparts, and I don't think they have them.
They don't.
But they still have an implementation.
Correct.
Okay, looking forward to that.
Yep.
Okay, so if you
So over the summer, we actually designated this year collaborating for outside of the core. It is as to how we're going to continue to collaborate. That instructional specialist work with Christy, so that moving forward we can find and for students who have the opportunity to participate in these programs moving forward.
And when you say moving forward, what does that mean? Like, because we have one person look at it and we're not just, trying to huge issue, but we're not giving you guys the support and the tools, so setting you up for failure in a sense, right? Because that is frustrating, I guess is the word. So how can we better serve any,
they're on grade level, obligation, right? And so, and I know you are all aware of that, but for the community to understand, so when we hear, well, there's only one 2E instructional specialist or only one instructional specialist to support emerging multilingual learners or 0 coaches for primary talent development, that's really concerning for me as someone who has to make sure that we provide all of these for our students. So I do just appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I think that as a division, we have there to brainstorm and look at the criteria that we have and the assessments and what are the, whether it's the blockage or the, the different access in which have to participate in programs. We'll be doing a small audit and revision of what the procedures and processes in place to then make a determination moving forward as to how to amplify the access for EMLs.
thank you.
And I think one thing I would just appreciate, not now, but is what does that ideal situation look like in your department, right? What does staffing actually look like? I don't think we know that. I mean, again, Ms. Jackson is like over there holding for TV, right? Like, we appreciate all the effort and she gives everyone, but there's 200 plus schools, and this is not a geographic challenge. We have gifted and talented students across the county and of our counties. If you don't have any further questions, I greatly appreciate all of your efforts, and we will see you next time. Thank you. And our final, last, but definitely not least presentation, item 3.4 on our agenda is an overview on our alternative programs. And if you can please introduce yourself at the table.
Good morning, members of the Board of Education. My name is Donna Redmond Jones, and I'm the Regional Associate Superintendent for Region 1 and 2 schools, including Blair Ewing Alternative Level 2 program. We appreciate your of alternatives in this committee's work. Alternative Level 2 program options are designed to provide direct, customized academic, behavioral, social, and emotional support to secondary students not been successful in the comprehensive school setting with alternative level 1 services that occur within every comprehensive secondary school. The mission of alternative level 2 programs is to leverage pathways to re-engage students and support graduation requirements. The approach is designed to nurture positive connections and use a range of instructional strategies to promote critical thinking and college and career readiness. The approach includes case management, counseling services, positive behavior supports, flexible scheduling, and access to online learning. Alternative programs consist of 2 sites. We have an Avery Road site and a North Lake site. Next slide, please. Maryland state law provides local schools the authority to address student needs in alternative settings. We implement placement procedures for alternative programs based on MCPS regulation IOI-RA. Reasons for referral to alternative level 2 programs include disciplinary placements, students who have been given an extended suspension from school, voluntary placement through the alternative programs admissions committee, administrative placement decisions by directors in the Division of School Leadership and Improvement, criminal reportable offenses to support students returning from the Department of Juvenile Services to make a more seamless transition into a comprehensive school, and interim alternative educational settings are temporary placements for up to 45 days at locations other than the regular academic program for students receiving special education services. Next slide, please. Celebrations from Blair Ewing include students who have been able to graduate. The opportunities for credit recovery are supported by a block schedule, and we celebrate 36 class of 2026 graduates and 34 students who graduated last year in the class of 2025.
We are also celebrating progress with increasing student attendance. In the 2025-26 school year, alternative programs experienced a 6.3% increase in attendance as compared to the prior year. We are celebrating the percentage of students meeting academic benchmarks. The goal in literacy and math from the past year was to have at least 70% of students meet the goal of earning a C or better in their English and math classes at the end of each semester. In literacy, 70.5% of the students met this benchmark at the end of marking period 2, and 80.5% met this benchmark at the end of quarter 4. In mathematics, 70.5% met the benchmark by the end of quarter 2, and 71% earned a C or better in mathematics by the end of quarter 4. Next slide, please. Given the multiple pathways students have for being served at Blair Ewing, enrollment data varies throughout the school year. In the 2025-26 school year, enrollment at Blair Ewing peaked at 275 students, and we're beginning the 26-27 school year with 139 students currently enrolled. Male students currently represent approximately 62.6% of the student population, while females represent 37.4%. Generally, the percentage of male students ranges between 60 to 67% of students. For the start of the 26-27 school year, African American students represent 48.9% of the student population, and Hispanic students represent 41.7% of the student population. Less than 5% of the students identify with other racial groups. Students receiving special education services are served in alternative programs as well. Currently, 18 students receive special education services. Last year, 50 students accessed services, and in the 2024-25 school year, 47 students received special education services. Last school year, the number of emergent multilingual students receiving language development services 55, and currently 26 students access language development services. Approximately 19 students both this school year and last school year receive Section 504 accommodations. The length of time students are enrolled in alternative programs really varies, can be as little as 2 weeks or span across multiple years. Next slide, please. Challenges that alternative programs face include the varying staffing needs based on the varying enrollment throughout the year, and the need to engage in the evaluation of our staffing allocations, including the staffing supports for students receiving the range of special services. Transportation is also a challenge, as it can take up to 10 days for transportation to start once the student is scheduled to begin at alternative programs. Alternative programs also needs additional assessing professional staff supporting students within inclusive settings, assessing courses such as studying skillful teaching. Since many teachers have multiple preparations, it is also challenging for teachers to plan within professional learning communities to leverage the collective capacity and expertise of staff. Finally, alternative programs struggle to offer a range of elective courses to students. Currently, the school does not have a music teacher, and as a result of the budget cuts, there is no media assistant, nor is there a media specialist to provide consistent access to school library media services. Next slide, please. The leadership of alternative programs measures success of their efforts through monitoring students' attendance, attitude, and achievement. It is a goal for students to achieve a 5 to 10% growth in their daily school attendance as compared with their attendance at their home schools. It is also a goal for students to develop and maintain a positive learning mindset. The school has a structured daily point system to reward positive behaviors and provide reflection time for students when they have not made good choices. A goal is for students to earn at least 85% of their points daily and to avoid suspensions. Finally, with academic achievement, as we discussed before, the goal is to earn a C or higher in their core academic subject areas. Through strengthening school attendance,
developing a positive mindset, and committing to academic achievement, students can maximize an opportunity for customized academic, behavioral, social, and emotional support through alternative programs. I thank you, and we can now move to discussion.
Thank you, and I'll go ahead and start with Ms. Stewart.
No music teacher. So is that a vacancy or a staff out?
Right, we do have to look at, this is one of the, we do have to look at the application, so we can see. So that is the challenge, is being able to, of course, elective at these sites.
About this.
Yeah. I'm wondering the why. I know you have it.
Right.
I just want to know the why it was not allocated. Like, what's the issue?
If you know, I mean, I recall when we were going through budgeting, right? Teacher allocation, other schools is not something that would have registered as even occurring to me.
Right, and I will need to find out specifically the reason. I don't know if we do. Yes, the principal is.
Can he come
up?
And then, like,
I'll add on, since the principal about, you said there's no media specialists or assistant, and that was budget really on the school, and who is actually filling in the gap so kids can have access. And by the way, access to music and books, to me, is like the very basic things we should be doing for human beings, okay? Not just students.
Right.
So anyway, we would love to hear your perspective.
And we know that this is not a reflection of you, either of you, or efforts to secure these.
We're all together. We want to know what's the effect, and then maybe how we can help.
All right, good afternoon. Damian Ingram, Principal of Alternative Programs. And teacher, limited amount of FTEs that were provided for alternative programs. We originally were in 3 sites, reduced to 2, and as such, we had a core of core teachers, English, math, science, and social studies that we already had, and then the remaining FTEs were divided into elective courses. Of course, one of them for each site would have to be physical education, and then the remaining FTEs were allocated to art and other electives that we thought were appropriate for our students. We are meeting the need of music or any other elective that students may come in into our school having from their comprehensive school by supplementing it with Edmentum, where students are taking online courses. It's not the same. We know that, but it's the best way for us to still try to provide that subject matter.
can you tell me, so you have electives, one of them is art, and what are the others besides PE?
We have Foundations of Technology or Computer Science. We also have Entrepreneurship and PE. And that's it.
Okay. And then the media?
Some time ago, we lost our media specialist, FTE. I can't remember how many years ago. It just hasn't been replaced. We are supplementing that by using our language arts teachers to provide opportunities for students to go to the media center and access reading materials when.
Laura, are you done? Can I follow? Or?
Well, first of all, thank you for letting us know how you are filling in the gaps. I mean, I knew that that was the case, but again, as we move forward in our budget season, I guess I want to hear, what would you with limited resources.
Or what should, I have kids myself. I know what I would like my kids to have when they go to school, wherever they go. And so that's what I want for all of the kids. And so I know the amazing things your art teacher does, and with the art show we saw last year, and I want that for music, and I want that for other opportunities. So, and I'm not sure if it has to be here, but perhaps we can follow up about what do you believe the students in your programs need that should be provided. I just want to make sure that we eventually get that from you, whether it's here or later.
All right. In an ideal situation, there would be an opportunity for our students to access the same that they access in school. Just the bottom line. When that's not available, it's to have those subject matters come in on a basis to provide supplemental services to our students.
So, thank you for being here, by the way.
No problem.
So this is what I'm going to say. As somebody who has worked many years with after-school programs and kids who are referred by DJS and so on, it is so important that the environment, and we're talking predominantly brown kids who are in these programs, correct?
Correct.
So for me, this is an immense equity issue. In a district like Montgomery County, it pains me that, and I know for a fact the music is one of the ways a lot of the express their emotions, or they turn to music, they turn to writing music, they turn to poetry, they turn to music. This is a way that they express their frustrations and so on, because we know that every home in this county is not a very safe, happy home, okay? So when other kids have these opportunities and not the kids who are in these programs, it not only pays me, but I'm embarrassed that we don't have it. And libraries, a leader, right? We say these things, there's elementary school, and to me, a library is also a place of sleep, a place of sense, a place of belonging. So for kids to have that is kind of like the dignity of the whole thing, right? Because we should not be treating young people differently in a sense. They should have a really nice looking library. Even if it's part-time, they should have a librarian that they can connect with and be like, and you and I know that some of these kids are not there just for a couple of weeks. Some of them actually find a very safe haven in these places where they find a place of belonging, so they're there for long term. So it pains me, quite honestly, to see that we are not really doing the advocacy necessary to make sure that these young people have that. And I can assure you, at least for me and my colleagues on this committee, we're going to advocate. And we have a sense of duty. And I know we have, but when it comes to, and when we have policies of equity, this is not a brainer for me. Even if it's a part-time music teacher.
Right.
Exactly, because this is therapeutic for kids, and these are exact kids that need that therapeutic need, right? Especially when it comes to music. And it's ironic thinking about the death of Dolly Parton, who both gave away and also provided that musical therapy. And so I think using her as an example, like, this is something that we can do.
And don't get me wrong, that I think foundations of technology and so on are important. They are. They all are. But there's something about music and theater and arts that these are, usually things that young people with emotional needs and that they have been through a lot, that they gravitate towards. And I think those of us who have worked with such populations know that this works because it gives them a voice. It gives them a sense of belonging, of ownership, of changing behaviors, of partnership, of working in collaboration, of creating, synergy with the other peers. So that's what I want to see when, I don't want us to think as those kids. These are every child, they're kids. They are kids, they belong in the system, and the system needs to ensure that they're treated with the same as any other child. And in fact, probably with a little bit more TLC, because again, not every home in our county is a safe home or a happy home. So thank you for your work. I know it's challenging because you have to do with what you have, right? So I appreciate it, and I appreciate your staff because I know this is hard work, and I know it's only hard. It gets harder because we see the challenges that our young people are having, and we see the behaviors that they are, and the needs with mental health and so on, which is, by the way, something that we didn't talk about on this, about the supports of mental health. And please tell me you have a nurse.
We have a part-time nurse.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Because I was about to be like, okay, I'm done. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I also want to say thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. I think that has so much value because we are actually in a position to try to do something. Again, even if it's part-time, or we can talk about how to fill in the gaps. So thank you.
And I just want to highlight for the community that this is not a pass-through program. This is not somewhere where, okay, you might go here. There might be some kids that might go for a few days or a week or a couple weeks. Yes, I have had the privilege, really, of officiating the graduation for the past 2 years. And every single time there are kids who there what was supposed to be for a week or two, and then they said, I just felt like I was getting what I needed here, and so I stayed. And sometimes they stay they may have come in 7th grade, and now they're graduating. So I just want to be very clear for all of us that these are our programs, our schools, like any other program in school, and so we must invest in them. So I appreciate both of you for your work, and I know that we are always in conversation to try to make sure that we can support our kids and work together to do that. So thank you, Principal Ingram. I know that you are doing a lot with very little, and so I just want you to know that we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our meeting. Are there any questions, final comments, or new business that any of my colleagues would like to bring to the committee? No? Okay, and so that concludes today's meeting for the Committee on Special Education. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Second.
Seeing no further questions, that concludes the Committee on Special Populations Business. I move that committee adjourn. And without objection, we thank everyone watching and listening to this very important information. The meeting is adjourned.